I'm glad you're receiving me because I have a confession to make. I lost everything I owned in Hurricane Harvey, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. In fact, I'm standing here today because the flood destroyed my house, but it also saved my life. The night the flood came for me, for my house and my family, I was sitting in a hot, stuffy attic that smelled like dust and rain and fear. And it was completely silent except for the sound of rain everywhere, above us hitting the roof, underneath us filling our house. All I could do was hold my kids close and try not to break down and just try to figure out how anything was ever going to be okay again. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up a little bit. When my husband Tony and I bought our house in Houston, we had scrimped and saved for years. It was our dream. It was our higher ground, and we were really intentional about not packing clutter when we were getting ready to move. I remember he was sitting in the kitchen holding up 2 identical crock pots asking if we needed both, and I was like, yeah, how are you gonna have meatball and quesos at the same party without 2 crock pots? Our move was smooth, and we had finally done it. We were in our dream house with only the things that mattered, my 2 crock pots and my family. And we lived that dream for 6 weeks before Hurricane Harvey started heading towards Houston. Now, our neighbors had lived in their house for 35 years, and they said, listen, don't worry. This neighborhood never floods, so we're gonna ride it out. So we decided to stay. And at first, the rain was actually a relief from the heat and the humidity that is Houston in August. But after hours and hours and hours of nonstop rain, it started to pool about a block away from our house. I could see it from our front door, and I couldn't help myself. I just stood there and watched it coming. At first, I measured it like a sundial as it crept across the street, but after a while, it came over the curb and started creeping up the sidewalk. And instead, I started measuring it against the mailbox. First, it swallowed the bottom, then the base, and it just kept rising. And all of a sudden, it was like, you know what? We should put the expensive things up high, just in case. And then, we should put money and passports, birth certificates, yes, in a bag, a go bag, yeah, just in case, yeah, just in case. And we should put some pillows and some blankets and some food in the attic, just in case, right? Just in case. Just in case is another way of saying, I know what's coming, but I'm not ready to accept it yet. We watched the water swallow the last step of our front porch, and we got our kids and my dad up that creaky ladder into the attic, as hot and stuffy as it was. And then Tony and I stood at the front door, holding hands, and we watched the water come across the doorway and start swallowing the hardwood floors of our dream house. There's a moment in a crisis where a different kind of panic sets in. It stops being about the flood and it starts being about you, your choices, your decisions, the failures you made, the things you stayed in too long because they felt safe. I'll never forget that water coming in. I'll never forget how I felt. And standing there looking at Tony, I knew we were thinking the same thing. Had we made the wrong call? And just like that, Tony went and grabbed a marker from the kitchen drawer, and he walked over to the wall just underneath the attic ladder, and he drew this hard, straight line about 3 feet off the ground. And he looked at me and he said, hey, listen, when the water reaches this line, we go, because I don't want us to die up there. For the next 3 hours, we sat in that hot, stuffy attic, and we just waited. Eventually, the power grid failed, and just like that, nothing. No light, no air, no sound except water everywhere. No way of knowing what was coming. Tony had a flashlight, and all we could do was watch that water creep slowly towards that line, inch by agonizing inch, and when it finally touched it, it was time to go. Coming down that ladder, when my foot hit the water, I gasped. It was so cold and pitch black. There was no way of knowing what was under the surface. I had my baby on my back, and when his foot touched the water, he grabbed me, and everything inside of me said, go back to the attic. Go back to the attic. It's dry up there. It's safe. There's cookies up there. But no, we had drawn our line, and it was time to face the flood. But we've all had to face a flood. Because not every flood looks like water. Sometimes it looks like burnout, or debt, or grief, or a relationship that slowly became lonely, or a version of success that looks impressive from the outside but feels strangely empty once you finally get there. And I have to ask you, what flood are you facing right now? And are you hiding? Are you hiding in the familiar, in the comfortable, in the, I'll just stay put until everything goes back to normal? That's your attic. And here's the thing about normal. What if the idea of normal is a little overrated? We swam out of our house in chest-high water in total darkness in the middle of the night. And 3 days later, the water finally receded enough that we could wade back in. And before I even opened the door to the house, I could smell it. Flood water and rot and sewage all steeped together. Everything we owned had that stench. The hardwood floors had buckled. All the furniture was destroyed. All of our family pictures ruined. And on every wall, in every room, this brown sludge showing exactly how deep things had gotten. It's hard to forget losing everything. Everything we owned was destroyed, was ruined. And so we had to make a decision. All Tony and I wanted was to get back to normal as quickly as possible, to rebuild what we lost. So friends, family, even relatives came to help us put it all back together. And while they were ripping out the drywall, they found something. In the wall that separated Tony and my bedroom from our kids, the wires had been sparking. The wires had been sparking. There were singe marks all up the studs, and all of the insulation had burnt to a crisp and washed away. When the electrician came out, he looked at that burnt wall and he said, "You're lucky your house flooded." Lucky, our house flooded. I didn't feel lucky, I felt sick. He said the house was absolutely going to catch fire, probably while we were sleeping in our beds with our kids down the hall, and we wouldn't have been able to reach them. The normal we were desperate to hold on to, desperate to get back to, the dream we were racing to rebuild was a literal death trap. But here's the thing, normal isn't always safe. Familiar isn't always healthy. And comfort can quietly become captivity. Standing in front of that charred wall, I finally understood it. The flood, the crisis wasn't the disaster, it was the rescue. The rescue from a disaster we didn't know we were already living. And ever since seeing that faulty wiring, a question kept rattling through my head. When the flood comes, and it will come, how do we chase it instead of getting trapped in the attic of normal and familiar and settling? You know, when Tony drew that line on the wall, he gave us a gift. He took our fear and our panic and our paralysis and he turned it into a clear trigger for action. Because you decide before the water rises what you will and will not tolerate. How many of you right now in your lives need to draw your line? And some of y'all really do need to draw your line. Taking that first step into chest-high water and total darkness, it felt impossible. I didn't feel brave, I felt destroyed. But that's the thing, when you draw your line, you have to trust in yourself enough to honor it. One foot in the front of the other, building momentum, because that's what it means to chase the flood. It means moving, even when you can't see what's on the other side. And a year later, Tony and I looked at the life that we had rebuilt, And we realized we were chasing what was and not what could be. We ourselves weren't living free. And a question kept following me that I'm going to ask every single one of you. If you had a chance to start over, would you rebuild your same life? Joni and I realized our answer was no. So we decided to walk away from all of it. We packed our lives into 8 suitcases and moved to Ghana, West Africa. And as soon as we decided to move, we started sharing our story online. And honestly, y'all, I didn't think anybody was going to watch. But something humbling happened. People started following along, first hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands, and now millions and millions of views later, our story has reached people we've never met in places we've never been. It reached the producers of a reality docuseries on HBO Max who came to Ghana to film us, to document the life we had rebuilt from the flood. What broke us became the most beautiful thing that we ever did. Because that's the thing, when one person leaves the attic, other people suddenly see the exit. So I ask you a question. Who is waiting on you to take that first step? Whose life changes the moment each of you decide to chase yours? I know that when we stand up here and we share our story, it feels like we're sharing a part of ourselves, and we are. But listen, the flood is rising for every one of us. Every one of us is facing that flood, and you all have a choice. You can close the door and wait for the water to recede and go back and rebuild your normal life. Or you can chase the flood. You can put one foot in front of the other and build the momentum that will set you free. Because the crisis isn't the disaster, it's the rescue. So let today be the day that you stop rebuilding what the flood took and start building what the flood made possible. Thank you.